She was 9 years old when she stood on one of the world's biggest stages and left an entire arena in silence, not from boredom, from disbelief. Celine Tam sang a song her father taught her, and within days, over 100 million people had watched it. The judges cried. Simon Cowell was speechless. But after the cameras turned off and the applause faded, nobody talked about what came next. And what came next was something most people never expected. The summer of 2017 was packed with moments. News cycles moved fast. Social media was louder than ever. Every week brought a new story, a new viral clip, a new face the world would forget by Friday. But one moment cut through all of it. It happened on a Tuesday night, on a stage in Los Angeles, in front of 4 judges who had seen thousands of performers walk through those same doors. A small girl stepped into the light. She was wearing a bright dress. Her smile was calm, almost too calm for someone that young standing in front of that many people. Her name was Celine Tam. She was 9 years old, and she had come from Hong Kong with one goal. When the judges asked about her idol, she didn't hesitate. She said Celine Dion, the singer she had been named after, the voice she had grown up listening to. Then she said she was going to sing My Heart Will Go On, the song most professional singers avoid because the standard is simply too high. The audience laughed softly, not meanly, more like the quiet, nervous laugh of people who already sensed something was about to happen. Then she sang. Within the first 10 seconds, the energy in the room shifted. People stopped moving. The judges leaned forward. By the time she reached the chorus, the entire audience was on its feet. All 4 judges hit their golden buzzers. Howie Mandel looked like he had just witnessed something he couldn't explain. Simon Cowell, the man who had spent decades building a reputation on cold, calculated criticism, sat back in his chair with an expression that said everything words couldn't. It felt different from other viral moments. It didn't feel manufactured. It didn't feel like a stunt. It felt real. And that's exactly what made it travel so far, so fast. Within 48 hours, the clip had been shared across dozens of countries. Media outlets from New York to Manila were running the story. The video crossed 100 million views faster than almost any AGT audition before it. She was on morning shows. She was trending in multiple languages. For a brief but undeniable moment, Celine Tam was one of the most recognized child singers on the planet. But here's what those 100 million viewers didn't know. That performance wasn't an accident. It wasn't a lucky break or a naturally gifted kid who wandered onto a stage and got fortunate. Behind every note Celine sang that night was something most people never saw. 6 years of structured, disciplined, daily vocal training that began when she was barely old enough to read. Her father, Ivan Tam, was not just a supportive parent cheering from the sidelines. He was a professional vocal coach with deep roots in Hong Kong's competitive entertainment industry. He had identified something in Celine's voice when she was 3 years old, and from that point forward, he built a structured path around developing it. By 5, she was performing publicly. By 7, she was competing. By 9, she was standing on American national television, singing one of the most technically demanding songs in modern pop history, and making it look effortless. That gap between what the audience saw and what actually went into that moment is where the real story begins. Because fame at 9 years old is not the same as success, and the world was about to see just how complicated the difference could be. The story of Celine Tam cannot be told without first understanding the man who stood behind her. Ivan Tam was not the kind of father who simply signed his daughter up for singing lessons and dropped her off on weekends. He was a trained musician, a professional vocal coach, a man who had spent years working inside Hong Kong's entertainment industry and understood, better than most, what genuine talent looked like and what it required to survive. When Celine was 3 years old, Ivan heard something in her voice that stopped him. It wasn't just that she could carry a tune. Lots of children can carry a tune. It was the quality of it, the natural resonance, the way she held notes without being taught to. He recognized it immediately, and he made a decision that would shape the next decade of both their lives. He would train her himself. This was not a casual commitment. Vocal training at that level, the kind designed to build a professional, performance-ready voice, is demanding even for adults. For a 3-year-old, It required a completely different approach. Patient, structured, consistent. Ivan built a routine around Celine's development that balanced technical discipline with the natural energy of a young child. He wasn't trying to manufacture a performer. He believed he was helping her become what she already was. By the time Celine was 5, she was performing in front of live audiences, small stages at first, local events, community performances in Hong Kong. But even then, the reaction was consistent. People stopped what they were doing. They listened. They stayed. By 7, she was entering competitions, winning them. Her name began circulating in Hong Kong's music community, a city with no shortage of talented young performers. Standing out there meant something. And through all of it, Ivan was present, coaching, observing, adjusting. On camera, their relationship looked warm and genuine. Celine spoke about her father with clear admiration. Ivan spoke about her with a pride that didn't feel performed. In interviews from that period, he described his coaching philosophy as disciplined but rooted in love. He said Celine never wanted to stop singing, that the drive came from her. Celine confirmed this every time she was asked. But even the most loving, well-intentioned path carries weight. And when that path leads directly to one of the most watched talent competitions in television history, at 9 years old, the weight becomes something different entirely. The world saw a happy, confident child with an extraordinary gift. And that was real. Nobody who watched that audition could reasonably claim otherwise. But the world didn't see the years of work that made that moment possible. It didn't see the pressure that comes with being the center of a parent's professional vision from the age of 3. It didn't ask what happened after the applause ended and the cameras went home. Those questions were coming, just not yet. Celine Tam did not win America's Got Talent. That sentence lands differently depending on who is reading it. For casual viewers, it might come as a surprise. For those who followed the 2017 season closely, it was simply the result of a competition where only one act could take the top prize. She made it further than the vast majority of contestants that year. She performed multiple times on that stage. She earned standing ovations more than once, but she did not win. For many child performers, that moment, the exit from a major competition, marks the beginning of the end. The show moves forward. The production team shifts its attention to the next season. The internet finds a new clip to share. The face that once felt familiar slowly becomes a memory. Celine Tam did not follow that pattern. In the months after her AGT run ended, she didn't retreat. She didn't disappear into quiet that swallows most viral moments. Instead, she moved. And she moved in a direction most Western audiences didn't follow closely enough to notice. She turned toward Asia. Specifically, she turned toward China and the broader Southeast Asia market. And in doing so, she stepped into an entertainment landscape that operates on an entirely different scale. Chinese talent competition shows routinely draw hundreds of millions of viewers per episode. The appetite for young, gifted performers in that market is enormous. And Celine, with her ability to sing in both English and Cantonese, had something genuinely rare, a voice that could cross cultural lines without losing its emotional impact. She began appearing on major Chinese television programs. The reception was significant. Audiences connected with her immediately. In a market where child performers are both celebrated and held to incredibly high standards, she held her own without visible effort. Her YouTube channel continued to grow during this period. Original songs began appearing alongside covers. Her view counts climbed steadily, not through a single viral explosion, but through consistent output and a fan base that kept returning. This kind of organic, sustained growth is actually harder to build than a single viral moment. It requires something deeper than novelty. She was also performing at live events, international stages, high-profile appearances that quietly signaled she was being taken seriously as a working artist, not just a child who had once impressed Simon Cowell. By any honest measure, Celine Tam remained active, visible, and relevant in the music industry during a period when most people assumed her story had already ended. But relevance in the entertainment industry is never simple. And for a child performer crossing into adolescence, the path forward is rarely as clean as the numbers suggest. The industry that had embraced her as a 9-year-old prodigy was beginning to ask a different kind of question, not whether she could sing. That had never been in doubt. The question now was who she was becoming, and whether the world was ready to see her as something more than the girl who once stopped a room. There is a particular kind of pressure that comes with growing up in public. It is not the same as ordinary adolescence, which is already difficult enough on its own. It is something layered on top of that, a version of growing up where the changes happening privately are constantly measured against a public image that was frozen at a specific moment in time. For Celine Tam, that frozen moment was a 9-year-old girl in a bright dress, standing under stage lights, singing a song that made the world stop. That image followed her everywhere. Between 2019 and 2022, Celine did something that is genuinely difficult to do in the entertainment industry. She kept working, quietly, consistently, without the kind of public drama that tends to follow child performers as they transition into their teenage years. She continued posting performances online, and for those who were paying attention, something noticeable was happening. Her voice was changing, not declining, not struggling with the natural shifts that affect young singers during adolescence, but deepening, expanding, gaining texture and emotional weight that simply cannot be taught. It can only come with time and lived experience. Vocal coaches and music observers who commented on her development during this period noted that she was doing something rare. She wasn't just maintaining the technical precision she had built under her father's training. She was building on top of it, adding layers, finding a tone that felt increasingly her own. She began choosing different kinds of songs. The sweeping, powerful ballads that had defined her early career were still there, but alongside them appeared quieter material, more nuanced performances that asked for restraint rather than power. This is a significant artistic shift for any singer, the move from impressing an audience to connecting with one. Her social media following continued to grow during this period, and something interesting was happening within it. A new generation of fans was discovering her, young people who had never seen the AGT audition, who had simply come across a video in their feed and stayed, because the voice was worth staying for. For these newer followers, she wasn't a child prodigy. She was simply a talented young artist. That distinction matters more than it might seem, because the child prodigy label, as flattering as it sounds, carries a silent expiration date. The world celebrates what a gifted child can do precisely because it is unexpected, because the gap between their age and their ability creates a sense of wonder. But as the child grows and that gap naturally closes, the wonder fades. What remains has to stand on its own. Celine appeared to understand this, or at the very least, she was moving in a direction that suggested it. But underneath the steady output and the growing numbers, a quieter and more important story was unfolding, one that had nothing to do with view counts or performance schedules. It had to do with who she was becoming when the camera wasn't on. And that was a question the world had never thought to ask. There is a question that almost never gets asked about child performers. Not about their talent. Talent is always discussed. Not about their management, their training schedules, their commercial potential, or their social media numbers. Those conversations happen constantly in boardrooms and comment sections and industry meetings around the world. The question that gets skipped, quietly, consistently, almost universally, is the simplest one. Was she okay? It sounds almost too basic to deserve serious attention. And that is precisely why it matters. Because the entertainment industry, for all its visibility and noise, has a long and well-documented history of failing the young people at the center of it, not always through dramatic abuse or obvious exploitation, more often through something quieter, through the slow, steady accumulation of pressure on a person who never had the chance to decide, fully and freely, who they wanted to be before the world decided for them. Research into child performers across entertainment history paints a consistent picture. Studies examining young athletes, actors, and musicians who enter professional environments before adolescence show elevated patterns of anxiety, identity disruption, and emotional burnout, even among those whose careers, by external measures, appeared successful. The pressure doesn't have to be cruel to be damaging. It simply has to be constant. Celine Tam's public story shows none of the visible warning signs that tend to accompany these patterns. There has been no reported crisis, no public withdrawal, no controversy, no dramatic exit from the industry, followed by years of silence. By every visible measure, she has moved through her unusual childhood and into adolescence with stability that is genuinely uncommon for someone who experienced that level of fame that young. But visible measures are limited, and the absence of a public struggle has never been proof of the absence of a private one. What makes Celine's story worth examining carefully is not that something went wrong. It is what her journey reveals about the system surrounding child performers, a system that is extraordinarily good at celebrating young talent and extraordinarily poor at protecting the human beings behind it. The 100 million people who watched her audition in 2017 were not wrong to be moved. That moment was real. Her voice was real. The emotion in that arena was real. But those 100 million views also represented something else, a weight of expectation, of public ownership, a projected hope that no 9-year-old can fully comprehend and no parent can fully shield against. She carried that weight through her childhood and into her teenage years. She kept singing. She kept showing up. She kept growing in ways that suggested genuine resilience and authentic artistic development. And somewhere in that quiet, consistent, undramatic continuation of a life lived largely in public, that is where the real story lives. Not in the applause, not in the view counts, not in what Simon Cowell said on a Tuesday night in Los Angeles, but in the fact that after everything, the fame, the pressure, the impossible expectations placed on a child who simply loved to sing, Celine Tam kept going. And that story is still being written. If this kind of untold story stays with you, the ones that happen after the spotlight fades, then there are more waiting. Stories of young talents, quiet struggles, and the lives that continue long after the world stops watching. Stay close. The next one might be the most important yet. There is something the internet rarely does well. It is not finding talent. The internet is extraordinary at that. It can take an unknown face from any corner of the world and place it in front of 100 million people within 48 hours. It did exactly that for Celine Tam in the summer of 2017. What the internet does poorly, consistently, almost structurally, is follow through. The algorithm that amplifies a moment has no memory. It has no loyalty. It moves forward because moving forward is the only thing it knows how to do. And the people caught inside those moments, the ones whose faces become briefly synonymous with wonder or talent or inspiration, are left to figure out what comes next entirely on their own. Celine Tam figured it out. By 2023, she was no longer the 9-year-old the world had briefly adopted as a symbol of pure, uncomplicated talent. She was a teenager, a working musician, an artist with a catalog of performances that stretched across multiple languages, multiple countries, and multiple stages, most of which the Western audience that had originally discovered her never saw. Her journey after AGT had taken her through Chinese television, international live performances, and a steady digital presence that continued to grow without the benefit of another single viral moment. She had built something more durable than fame. She had built a career imperfect, evolving, and entirely real. And in doing so, she had joined a very small group. The history of child performers who successfully transition into sustainable adult careers is not long. For every artist who navigates that crossing with their talent and well-being intact, there are dozens whose stories end quietly in the space between who they were celebrated as and who they were trying to become. The pressure of that transition is something the entertainment industry acknowledges in theory and ignores in practice. Celine's navigation of it was never loud. There was no rebranding moment, no dramatic announcement of a new artistic direction, no carefully managed public reinvention. She simply kept working, kept developing, kept showing up on stages and in studios and in front of cameras with the same consistency that had defined her since childhood. That consistency is itself a kind of answer to every unasked question about what happens to child prodigies after the world moves on. Some of them disappear. Some of them struggle in ways the public never sees. Some of them find their way back to themselves after years of distance from the industry that first claimed them. And some of them, the rare ones, never lose a thread. They carry what was genuine about their gift forward through every difficult transition, every quiet year, Every moment when the world wasn't watching. Celine Tam appears to be one of those. Not because her story is perfect. It isn't. No story lived as publicly from this young an age could be, but because the voice that stopped a room in 2017 is still singing, still growing, still becoming something that no single viral moment could ever have predicted. And perhaps that, more than anything else, is what happened after America's Got Talent. The girl didn't fade. She grew up.